Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, talking today about what I consider the greatest book ever of D&D, which is the first supplement, Greyhawk, back from 1975. And I say this with a little bit, well, not tongue-in-cheek, because I do think it's the greatest of the books that came out, but I understand that people are going to be like, no, first of all, it's all up to your personal taste of what's the greatest. And for some people who are OD&D fans, OD&D and chainmail or whatever, the Greyhawk was the beginning of the end, right? With all its additions and whatnot. For other people, they think more system, which system of D&D was the greatest. But I think there's a pretty compelling case to be made that many of the innovations that were introduced, first of all, have stuck around from the beginning, but the impact of the way we as players and GM approach the game was changed significantly by this book. And, the very first aspect that makes it great is it was the first supplement, right? For good or ill, because some of the supplements, we all know about supplement bloat for various systems. But this was the idea. You'd have a base rule set, and then you just start adding things on. Some clarifying rules, adding new character classes, something that this tradition has continued on all the editions of D&D, certainly, and many other RPG systems. But the other thing that it did was it reflected that people were playing this game. That it wasn't just this group of people that wrote it, Gygax and Arneson and their friends, or just a few select people they'd given out manuscripts to. Now it was out in the world. And people were writing to them, and in Dragon Magazine and Strategic Review and all those things. And they were responding to that. And they, some of the ideas that they had, they couldn't fit in the book. Now they were here. So I think that's why this book to me remains the greatest. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dip in. I'm not going to go to the level I did the Rules Encyclopedia, and it took like 3 videos or something, and I'm not going to that level. I'm not a person that just likes to leaf through those videos where they leaf through a book, but you never really get to read it, and they just talk about it. I'm going to look at the pages. I've got a PDF copy of this. But what I want to do is just go over some of the innovations that really did change the game. I did a version of this that was like an hour and something. I mean, I literally went through everything. I'm not going to do that. It's too long. So I'm going to go over the ones that I think were really influential. But I encourage you, if you're interested in the history of D&D, you're interested in OD&D or OSR or whatever, to get a reprint of this and look through it, because you'll see what I'm talking about here. So let's dive in and look at Greyhawk. So when we look at the first page of this book, The Men in Magic, we have our 2 character classes, one main class thief, one subclass paladin of the fighting class. So again, as players, we're like, oh, you're going to have new character classes. Cool. Who knows what's coming next? And the thief was iconic. This is when all the players were lawful, neutral, or chaotic. They weren't really chaotic. And most people weren't necessarily neutral. And notice why. It says all thieves are either neutral or chaotic, although lawful characters may hire them on a one-time basis for missions which are basically lawful. So that indicates that people would not run with them otherwise. Well, of course, we wanted to run them. And we had lawful fighters. So we just blew that right off. So here again, you have rules that, we're interested in the ideas, but we're not necessarily going to just take these rules at face value. And they're not as strong as other classes in hit dice. Why? Because now the 6D hit dice thing is gone, and character classes have differing hit dice. Another concept that was, the first time it was introduced. I don't want to say revolutionary, but you know what I'm saying. First time ever. So thieves had all these different, opening locks, listening at doors, removing traps, all these great abilities that were very useful in a dungeon. Because, as I going to keep stressing throughout this comes from people playing the game and wanting, okay, we're going to do dungeon crawls. We want characters that could do these kind of things, that specialize in them. And so they create the thief. And also you have dwarves, elves, half-elves who are introduced here, another race, and hobbits can be thieves, and there's no limit to their continuing to advance. So that was cool. What they introduced to is striking silently from behind, where the thief sneaks up on someone. If they do it, they increase a +4 on their hit dice, and they do double damage. That's a nice ability. But again, they got to be able to sneak up silently and strike from behind. 5th through 8th, they go 3 times. 9th through 12th, 4 times. That's nice. So they make some changes with dwarves because they're going to emphasize now ability scores, not merely with, a bonus on getting experience and whatnot. Now we're going to look at these and we're going to do a granular, emphasis on them. So at 17, they go up to 7th level, 18 strength, work up to 8th. Elves as well, 17 and 18th, they go up higher levels. And we also have the ability, elves can become thieves. Either they do all three, fighter, thief, magic user, or they just are a thief, which people went for, because people really like thieves. As I say, this was an iconic character. I played plenty of thieves. My friend Jeff Stern loved Thief, and he loved the Hobbit Thief. Why? Because they got better abilities, as you'll see in statistics regarding classes. They introduced half-elves. Again, all these books, there's some confusion here as to, you go down here, there are no half-elf clerics, for in this regard, their human side prevails. However, half-elves with a basic wisdom score of 13 or more may also become clerics, right? Didn't divide experience, which we said, oh, okay, we'll do that, right? So here you have your ability scores being determined and, changing. Look at the hit probabilities change, damage on strength, what you can carry. If you get an 18, you roll this. I actually rolled an 18 once on a strength, and I rolled a 0.28 or something, so I just used the 18 standard. But still, ability scores made a difference. Intelligence with magic users, percentage chance to know spells, how many you got per level. This meant if, you really wanted those high scores, and this really started to change. When you really wanted those high scores, it started to change how people determine them. Because you get down here to charisma of 17, that's what you need, a 17 or 18 in order for a fighter to be a paladin. That's not easy, especially when you roll. In those days, we did strength, intelligence, wisdom, constitution, dexterity, charisma in that order. And you just rolled 3 dice. So what are the chances that you're going to get a 17 on charisma? Not very good. So what happened? People started to say, well, you'll roll 6 dice, 6 sets of 3, and then you'll put them wherever you wanted, which made getting a paladin a lot easier. And then people started doing 4 dice, taking the best 3 and still putting them wherever you want. Because now it was so much more valuable to have attributes that were high. Your strength or your intelligence or, dexterity, that kind of stuff. And so this emphasis, right, as things become granular and as you add these subsystems, it changes the way both people play and generate characters. Because look at the con thing, right? If you've got a high con, not only do you increase your hit dice, but your probability to survive a resurrection or spells like polymorph or stone to flesh, these kind of things. So you had a low con. That mean, again, it wasn't super. Most people, but you had a 10, you had a 55% chance to get a stone, a stone to flesh spell. That's not so great. They mention here that non-player characters, all retainers in the service of chaotic characters, have lower loyalty scores. This means that people are playing chaotic characters, which I really didn't do, I think, before this, at least in my world. All right, so notice thieves have a very easy progression, but as you'll see why, what is it right here? Alternate hit dice. This is where they introduce the idea that characters are going to have varying hit dice. Fighters have 8-sided, magic users and thieves have 4s, makes them very vulnerable, clerics 6. That was a big deal. And of course, it continues to this day in many systems. Here you have your percentages for thieves to be doing things like opening locks and remove traps and whatnot. Hearing noise, you subtract this because you might hear on a 1 out of 6. So you roll and you subtract. Notice down here, you have bonuses to dwarves, elves, and hobbits. And notice it's advantageous to be, an elven thief, plus 15% to hide in shadows, and plus 10% to move silently. You sneak up on somebody and get behind them and do that backstab. That's nice. So here's another one where we didn't pay any attention to this. They said famously, rather than the ridiculous 100 points per level, now it's this total nerf. It's like, Gary, you guys came up with this. Why is it ridiculous? Why did they do that? Because they could see people were writing letters going, oh, I got these, 15th level characters. What am I supposed to do and stuff? They were just handing out experience crazily in their mind. So I think this was an attempt to rein it in. We just took one look at this and said, forget it. It's hard enough going up. So again, learning something about these guys aren't gods. We can ignore their rules. Another thing that changed everything was different numbers to hit depending on your item, right? You can see all these things. So we're like, look at that flail, +2, and different damage types for this. This made a huge difference in terms of combat, in terms of what you were, weapons that you wanted to get, the magic weapons you created, and everything else. Again, more granularity. It's not out of hand at this point, but it's pointing in that direction, my friends. Now we have damage types, fight monsters, much more detailed, how many attacks they get, what's the damage they do. Again, this was, totally changed the game, changed combat for us. And for us, it was a great change. We love this. Now, they had new spells that they introduced, and they clarified older spells. And these reflected, I think, people playing the game. Look at here, at first level, you have Shield, great spell. Plus 2, you have a 2 armor class against ranged attacks, 4 armor class against, melee. That was nice, especially if you were like a magic user. You put that on a thief or something. Magic Missile, a classic to this day. Automatic hits. Ventriloquism, very useful. Darkness, 5-foot radius, great spell. Strength spell, awesome. Was it 1d8 or 2d8? Something like, no, 1d8. Was it 2 to 8? So it would be 2 4-sided dice. 2 to 8, I believe. Increase your strength for 8 hours. That became a standard spell to throw. The web, amazing spell, really useful. Mirror image, great. 1 to 4 images of yourself, right? You can't tell. Just great. These higher levels. And then, of course, we get up here. 7th, 8th, 9th, all new spells, all super deadly. And unless otherwise specified, they had no save on them. That's tough. Now, did we have characters that could throw them? They might have gotten some characters, some absurd, specialized people that played forever and ever that had 7th level. But here's the thing. You'd find scrolls. You'd find a wish scroll or a power word kill scroll. And this became your back pocket, your ultimate, we're all going to die back pocket scroll. So these spells were great. Clerics had some silence, 15-foot radius, great spell. Speak with Dead, really useful. And, of course, 6th and 7th level spells. Some of these, these 7th level especially, the Earthquake, the symbol spells were awesome. Really great abilities there. They refined Charm to allow, instead of just you're taking control of these things, no matter how smart or dumb they are, they give you this chart where they make these checks. Lots of this kind of stuff in here where they clarify because people had questions. And that's what's cool. And they clarified the spell. And you could choose whether I'm going to stick with the old style, right? I'm not doing that. But, of course, almost everything we took, we just played with it. There were some things we rejected out of hand, like experience points. But most of it, we tried to see how it worked. So I'm looking at this strength spell. It's 2 to 8 for fighters, 1 to 6 for clerics, and thieves by 1 to 4. Okay. So I'm not going to go over all of the spell descriptions and stuff. It just takes too long. So I'm going to go down here to Monsters and Treasure because, again, iconic monsters are introduced in this. Things like Bugbears, Ogre Mage. We loved Ogre Mage. Nice abilities, spells. Storm Giants and Titans. Shadows, very nasty with that Strength Drain ability. You got Liches. I just thrown in there like along the list. Liches, very nasty. Harpies we ran all the time because we were always at lower levels. Things like Lycanthropes. Umber Hulks, we loved these. Displacer Beasts, Blink Dogs. These are iconic monsters. Hellhounds, Phase Spiders. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm not going to go Golems. But I've missed it here. Where is it? Because they're not in order alphabetically. What is it? Beholders, that's iconic and it's deadly. So here's some descriptions. They also do some clarifications, like vampires are affected by the cross. Okay, explaining that and whatever the religion is. Talking about druids, as I said, they're not player characters yet. So they give you these explanations of these things, and as I say, here's the Liches ranges from 12th level upwards, but typically 18th level magic use. That is nasty. And of course, you have the introduction of the metallic dragons, brass, copper, bronze, and silver, and the platinum and chromatic queen of the dragons. The platinum is the king of all lawful, the queen, super nasty. And their chance of talking sleeping spell use per level, 0% chance of having the king or queen sleeping, right? Because the sleeping dragon, the smarter they are, the less of a chance. So those are the days when you try to find them sleeping. There's the beholder's abilities, right? The eye stalks, in 1 to 4 of the eyes are able to function. Man, there was some nasty flesh to stone ray, disintegrate ray, death ray. Those are the days, my friend. I'm going to talk a little bit about the weapons that were introduced. One of the things was you had things like, weapons +2s and 3s and 4s, and also with abilities like a +2 sword with a charm person ability, or +1 sword that's +2 against a certain monster, all this kind of stuff. Some great ideas for us when this is the kind of thing we homebrewed all the time, was magic items. The Vorpal Blade is an especially, now again, to roll it up, you got to get double zeros, sword of sharpness 2, 1% chance of the dancing sword. But the Vorpal Blade is, I'm just going to go down to its description. Because the Vorpal Blade, it only needs a 10% chance over the required score to hit, or always on an 18 through 20. So a 15% chance that it always severs the neck. Again, this was like a gag item to us. And I remember having an evil NPC with one of these. Imagine fighting that. Many, many iconic magic items are in here. The one that I'm going to really talk about, I would do the Scarab with the Scarab of Death. Where is that? Is this? Yeah, Scarab of Death. You put it on, or it's in your backpack or bag or somewhere near your body, and it turns into a burrowing monster, digs directly to your heart and kills you. That's it. After one full turn. No save, apparently. That's nasty. And then, of course, one of the classics of all time here, going down. I mean, these are all so great. I really encourage you to you can find PDFs of this book, but buy one of the reprints. It's really worth going through to see its historical significance. The Sphere of Annihilation was one of these items where you're like, what is this? 2-foot in diameter thing. Anything that comes into contact is completely irrevocably destroyed. Wishes notwithstanding. And the thing is that it moves 30 feet a turn, and if it's not controlled, it moves towards the person trying to control it. So if you get one of these, where do you put it? It goes through walls, it goes through anything. So it's going to come after you the moment you try to control it. So it was kind of like a weird thing, like it was left somewhere. So obviously, if you can control it, right, but you got to be, you're going to try 55% chance at 12th or 13th level, or be annihilated. I guess every turn you try to do it, but you got to move out of its way. And it moves pretty fast. All the figurines of wondrous powers are introduced here. So many great things. And then, of course, the classic item, the Deck of Many Things, introduced here. Perhaps the most iconic treasure in all of D&D. This one is, as usual, great stuff if you pick right. Bad stuff if you pick wrong. You can pick 1 to 4 cards, up to 4 times. And, the 50,000 experience, that was awesome. Then you get 25,000 if you pick again. And lose an experience level immediately. Again, immediate death, no save. Turn to stone, no save. Those are nasty. It isn't kind of the more advanced one, but still half good, half bad. And nobody could resist. It was just, actually, I did see somebody that did one time, but that was once. And the final thing that I will talk about is this Underworld and Wilderness adventure, because for me, this was perhaps the most influential section on my personal style of gaming, because they gave you ideas. Giant bubbles which float about and explode when you touch them. Just like a harmless little bubble, right? Box of animal crackers which spring to life, right? And we would have you, attack you or whatever. Again, this was kind of this silly kind of aspect of D&D that I've talked about on my podcast that these guys used to do. But all these doors that only open for certain alignments or certain creatures, furniture with animated furniture, lice that become burrowing and can kill you and stuff. I mean, just classic stuff. The other thing they had, if you go down here, monsters in different combinations and monsters that are not what they appear. This was very influential to us. Because you go, however, let's say 1-hit die skeletons, I think they're half even, or whatever they were, suddenly you run into some that are 10 dice. Like, what's this? And I talked about this on my Patreon and said, look, people, they want some consistency, right? So everything can't be just one day they're 1-hit dice, one they're 10. It has to make sense. Either you warn them. This necromancer has a super elite guard made up of 10-hit die skeletons. Or if they do just run into them, there is an explanation. But this idea that they don't all just have to be out of the monster manual. And then again, a Balrog riding a red dragon, that's nasty. I don't know what level you'd be to take that on. Just ideas of this where things didn't have to be what they appeared. Things didn't have to be like the manual. Things could be combined. This was Very influential. They do say the possibilities are numerous and very deadly, and these combinations should only be used sparingly or very deep in dungeons. So there you have it, my nominee for the greatest D&D book of all time. I'd love to hear your comments on what you think is the greatest book. And, of course, a shout-out to my Patreon supporters. This week I talked about, I had this Orcan Village map that I'd set up this thing with orcs that had discovered this artifact and had changed them. And it was along the lines of surprising the players with something they didn't expect, which came, the tradition coming from this book. So thank you all for your support. And if you like what you've seen, subscribe, like it. I always like to get those. But as always, my friends, whatever system you play, OSR or 5e, something in between, or some other system, have fun doing it and tell somebody else about it.